get rolling. Are you ready, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we're ready.
All right. I'd like to call to order the Health and Human Services and Aging Committee. Today, Wednesday, January 18th. We have a lot of agenda items before us. We will go out of order with item G will be the first item that we will hear. Madam Clerk, if you can please call the roll.
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll for Ms. Conwell.
Present.
Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
Ms. Turner.
Present.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Stevens. Ms. Stevens is absent.
All right.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to excuse Councilwoman Stevens.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Even though we don't have to do that, we just do it as a courtesy. Thank you. Anyone signed in, Madam Clerk, for public comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have one person signed in for public comment. Lou?
Okay, welcome. Happy New Year, Ms. Lou.
Good afternoon. Happy New Year's. And as you all know, the New Year's is a little longer for me because the rabbit is hopping in for the Lunar New Year. I definitely support all the agenda items we have on today's, meeting. However, I just don't understand, while we are trying to do some hard work, how come we cannot still get the fundings to demolish the Hale and the 2100, these two buildings, to rebuild? If people really don't think homeless lives matters, fine, then just put us in the county jail, as I have been suggested from 2019. If you think that we still deserve some help for us to get back on the feet, then why we cannot have a proper living conditions, not as inhumane as it has been for decades. There are reasons why we have all these codes for public health codes and fire code and all those things. They do exist for reasons. You want to squeeze lots of people in a smaller space, everything leaking, no air ventilation, and you think people can thrive? Before the Lunar New Year comes in, let me say that again. Do we really want everybody to thrive together in this county, or we just want everybody to die together in this county? People working hard. Health and Human Services are vital. But still, we have contradictory public policies to push people into incarcerations and poverty, homelessness. Don't you think this year maybe we should hop on more to make the change, make the improvement possible? So there's some equity there. Instead of funding all the things we don't need, please fund something we actually need. The vital health and human services. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lou. Is there any other public comment, Madam Clerk?
That concludes our public comment.
All right. Approval of the minutes from the November 29th and November 30th, 2022 meeting. Can I have a motion to?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Sweeney, seconded by Turner. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, Dale, I heard Turner. There are several matters referred to the committee today. Who is coming to speak in relation to item G? We're going out of order, and then we'll follow the rest of the agenda as planned. Madam Clerk, if you could please read the record, item into the record.
Resolution 2023-0018, authorizing an amendment to a master contract with various providers for short-term emergency child care for children in the county's custody for the period September 1st, 2022 through July 31st, 2024, to change the scope of services and terms effective upon signature of all parties. No additional funds required for the providers listed as items G 1 through 4.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Miller.
Before we start, I would mention that this is a Centers for Families and Children contract. So since my wife works for that organization, I'm going to recuse from any
Thank you.
participation on this item.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, David Merriman on behalf of the Department of Health and Human Services. First, I want to thank you, Councilwoman Conwell, as chair, for moving this item up. We had an unforeseen circumstance that is going to pull some staff away before 2. We're happy to present this item. This is an item that has been referred out of the Board of Control, and we are coming forward today with an adjustment of the cover of the contract and an amendment to the contract that will enable the center's short-term emergency child care program, we're referring to it as T-Suites, to be able to make payment for capital changes out of ARPA funds. Want to be very clear on this point. This the service that is being provided by the centers was funded out of ARPA. ARPA can be used for capital expenses. There is no advances being made out of this. They're asking for payment on capital related improvements to their building to be able to open their program. I've been joined today by Jackie Fletcher and Marcos Cortez. I'll ask if either of them have anything to share.
Good afternoon, Jackie Fletcher, DCFS. Just wanted to share, we are pleased and excited to be able to refer our first kid to T-Suites as of today. So they are open for business today, and we will be referring their first young person. We only have one young person in the building today, and so that young person will be going.
All right. Are you ready for questions?
Yes.
All right. And I missed what Jackie's last point was. Sorry about that. So I take it since Director Fletcher mentioned that the first child will be moving in as of today. Have all the renovations been completed? And if not, when is the expected date of completion?
Yes, all the renovations have been completed. I understand from the centers, they got final approval through their compliance boards on Friday, clearing the ability for the program to open this week.
Did they need state licensing or anything like that?
They are licensed through the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, and I am joined today by Eric Morris. He is here as well. So if there are questions directly for the centers, Eric is able to answer those in addition to anything that I share.
And are you at adequate staffing level? And how many staff have been hired to date? And I don't know if that's probably a executive director's answered that.
So I'm assuming that's in reference to the center's program. I can
Yes.
ask Eric to come up, and I'll ask him to introduce himself and the role that he serves in, and then ask him to speak to the staffing question.
Hi, Eric Morris from the centers. Hi. Nice
Hi
to see you.
there.
Hi. Yeah, so we have staffed up. We are probably staffed to handle 4 kids at this point. We do have our other employees in the pipeline so that we can get to the full 8. As David mentioned, we are starting with 1 child today. Excited to get that started, and then we'll be working with the department to slowly fill up the other beds as we continue to learn and develop our policies and procedures in like real time. So.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues in regards to this? This is a long awaited
Yeah, thank you and good luck.
program.
Thanks.
I don't think it would be the answer to everything, but we are definitely excited about that we're moving in a direction of solutions. So if you can schedule something with Levine, I'd like to come right out and see it and open that up to any committee members as well. All right. Anything else, David? I think you guys answered all my questions in
Not
your
on this matter.
presentation.
Well, and I know we've anticipated having council as well as the county executive out. That's something that we're talking about. We're trying to get scheduled, and I just want to confirm that we have confirmed that when we do that, we'll be able to move any children out of the building or out of that area while we have a walkthrough, just so we're not in the position where you have visitors and you also have guests at the same time.
And if you could cover a little bit about the children that this center's contract will be overseeing.
So these are children 13 to 18. There's a high likelihood they will be involved with multi-systems, including the Adams Board, the Board of Developmental Disabilities, the Juvenile Court, and Family and Children First Council. Those systems are supporting this program. We had a conversation about the opening at 11 o'clock today with the executive directors of each of the systems. We continue to work with them. We understand that the doors are open. We'll have our first kid. We're going to start learning day one, minute one, and this program will continue to evolve all the way through. I think Eric said that there's, the plan is to have one child today, work into a second, work into a third, work into a fourth. I think we want to just also recognize this is new for the children. At the end of the day, these are our kids. This is a major change. And we want this to be successful for them, even more than us and for the centers. This is an important resource, and we want to do it right, and we want to learn and also get feedback as we go.
Okay, just want to ask a question since this is new. For the multi-systemic children that will may have to spend some time at this center, will the procedure be when they're brought into the care still come through DCFS, or will they be taken directly?
Yeah, placement will occur by DCFS. Despite the support we're getting from the other systems, DCFS is holding the contract, and it will be a placement from our organization and our staff to the centers.
Good. And my other question would be, so you said this was Adams Board, Board of DD. Will they have staff present at all times at this facility, or they're just participating in funding at this time?
Yeah, I think I would say they've participated from the beginning. They helped us write the RFP. They helped us score the RFPs. They helped us select the provider. This is just all in relation to the T-Suites, the adolescent project that we've been talking to, not to the other short-term emergency child care centers. They're going to fund portions of it. And we've talked about having some of their staff out when situations arise, and we need consultation, we need additional support. And they've offered to help us with some of the high-need, multi-system involved youth as of today. I mean, there are kids right now that we're looking at that have real significant needs, and we're talking about how we integrate services to best meet their needs.
That's not confirmed yet.
It hasn't begun yet.
All right, open it up to any of my colleagues. Hearing none, seeing none. All right. I take it this is second reading suspension.
Please.
All right, I'll make a motion to move whatever that item number, R2023-0018, to the full council under second reading suspension. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Conwell, seconded by Turner. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
One recusal.
All right. One recusal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, if you could read the next item into the record.
Resolution 2023-0007, making an award on requisition 8737 to Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry in the amount not to exceed $735,278 for alternative housing and related support services for COVID recovery for the period July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Excuse me, Sarah Parks Jackson with the Department of Development. This is a contract that we are entering into with Lutheran Metropolitan Housing using our Community Development Block Grant CARES Act money. That's what the CV stands for. In late 20, we got an allocation of CARES Act fund through our CDBG. And we had specific things we could use those dollars for, which we did. We did mortgage assistance. We also did some food service assistance. And these dollars represent the balance of those funds. After consultation with the Department of HUD, they indicated that, yes, in fact, We could use these for affordable housing, and yes, in fact, we could use these funds to support housing that was being either purchased or rehabilitated in an effort to help those that are coming out of the continuum of care. For the first time, we entered into a group RFP with Health and Human Services so that we would all be seeing different applications that were going to provide alternative housing choices. We chose Lutheran Metro Ministries because of what they were doing with folks coming out of the homeless system and providing them the shelter that was so desperately needed. If you look at the contract term, we had a little delay in getting the addresses from Lutheran and then going through the environmental reports that HUD requires us to do. So that brings us here today. I also have Michael Searing here with me from Lutheran Metro Ministries who can talk more about the project.
All right.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, and thanks to Council for consideration of this support. I'm Michael Searing. I'm Vice President of Housing and Shelter for Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry. And I just wanted to share a little more about the project. This is part of an overall effort that we have, part of ending homelessness for families. All of our families come from the continuum of care, and this project also helps with shelter deconcentration by getting people out of shelter and into permanent housing. Our total goal is 20 houses, of which this effort would provide funding for 5 of the units. We have identified them. It is 1 duplex and 3 singles. They are all in the St. Clair Superior neighborhood, which is near Lutheran Metro Ministries' main offices. We're really excited about this project, and we also find it very important as a landlord in this instance to not rule out families for any barriers. We don't do any criminal background check. We don't check evictions, a credit score. Nothing. We know families need housing, and we're really excited to be able to open the door to permanent housing. So if there's any additional questions.
Councilman Miller.
Madam Chair, how much money remains in the CDBG CARES Act funds that we received to Director Jackson?
Councilman Miller, these funds that we are identifying to go to Lutheran were the dollars that were our balance. As we look at what both entities that we provided funding to, whose contracts just ended December 31st, we will be able to determine if in fact they used all of those dollars. They still have 45 days to submit their final reimbursement. If they have funds left over, then we will reallocate those funds to other projects.
Okay, understood. Thank you. My second question is, what is our plan as to how we're going to maintain the continuity of these 5 housing units once we get past 6/30/2023?
Are you referring to just like operations costs?
Whatever expenses it takes to run them.
Yes. So we appreciate this, these initial funds that are for the capital. From there, we're going to follow the model that we've currently been utilizing, where we work with the Continuum Partners and Eden through their Rapid Rehousing short-term voucher program. And so far in the other part of our initiative, we have 5 families that have successfully moved into our housing. 3 have just celebrated completing 1 year of stable housing with us. So it's not required of additional funding support beyond what's currently existing.
And final question is regarding the lateness of this submission. It's listed as being for the period 7/1/2022, which is well in the past. What is the impact of receiving this approval so late in the planned year?
Actually, we're in a decent position for that. This is part of our bigger overall effort on 20 houses. Lutheran Metro Ministries fundraising effort called Breaking New Ground, which was part of our 50th anniversary, has raised funds. So the delay in the actual contract hasn't slowed us down from identifying houses and moving forward, and we'll be able to complete within the 6/30 end date.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, or Chairwoman, my bad. First, let me thank you for the career path you chosen. It's just the good Lord's work. When you mentioned that there's no criminal background or employment, whatever, we just try to get people in and care about them. What is the structure, though? There got to be something.
Yeah,
Through
it's
the
part
chair.
of the Housing First initiative, where ideally, people would be moved into permanent housing as soon as possible. And with the Rapid Rehousing Program and partnership, these families would have 12 months of rent paid for by Rapid Rehousing, and they would have case management support currently provided by our partners at Frontline Services. And during that 12 months, they can be doing training, they can be looking for jobs, employment, counseling, any services along the way.
That's wonderful, and the success rate is most likely very good. But just how do they get chosen? Because you said in the initial is there an application, and in the application just name and nothing else, or name, social security number, name?
Yeah, actually, so
Trying to
we
figure that out.
work in partnership with the shelters and Eden, and so all referrals come, and that way we're ensured that they are currently homeless and coming from shelter setting. The only requirement is that their family size matches the occupancy of the house. So that's the only thing that has to match. Once a family has been selected and they move in, we ask them if they would optionally share some additional information for our own demographics and record keeping.
Beautiful. So through the chair, it basically comes from the homeless shelter, and they say, okay, this is a family that fits this model for the next step in their bettering their lives.
Correct.
Perfect. So thank you very much, and I just needed a more clear understanding, and thank you for letting me know.
And how long do the families get to stay here?
So we are very excited that it is permanent housing, so they would stay as long as they'd like. We imagine that there would be some turnover at some point. So far, our sample size is fairly small. 3 families, they moved in right around Thanksgiving of last year, and all 3 have succeeded in year 1 and have renewed with us for a second-year lease.
Okay, and so they maintain the rent and all that
Yes.
through support of Rapid Rehousing support and other supports?
Yes, so Rapid Rehousing pays the rent in its entirety for year 1. A couple of our families had applied for and received other housing vouchers, housing choice vouchers, and then we've transitioned to the rent there. And then we have one additional support available. When Lutheran Metro Ministry did our capital fundraising for the overall initiative, we included some funds to set aside a family stability fund, we call it, where we can ensure that we keep rent at 30%. So for, say, a mom that did not have government assistance, we could offset the rent from our internal fund.
Are these families coming from the Salvation Army?
So far, I believe it's been Zelma George, Westside Catholic, and there's also Eden, because they can place people with us. I'm not sure of necessarily where all of them come, but the Family Continuum of Care shelter system.
How were they selected?
We put out, when we have a unit open, we put out a request for names, and we give about a 2-week window to receive those. And if we have the right number that match the availability, that's just how we select. If we have more recommendations than slots, then we just do a random selection from the eligible families.
And who's responsible? Like, is it Westside Catholic Shelter or the actual individual that is sending in that request? Is it coming from the agencies?
The case managers or the housing locators send us the names.
And you mentioned that this is a 20 housing goal. You've completed 5 housing units. Where are we at? Where are you at in terms of getting more funding for the 15 remaining?
Yes, we've actually, Lutheran Metro Ministry has exceeded our total fundraising goal, which was set at $3 million. So the dollars are there to carry it out. I'm looking at my notes here. So we have 5 currently occupied. We have 2 more opening in March. This award would be 5 additional slated for June, and we have 3 more in the pipeline. That would get us to 15 of our 20 by the end of the year.
Good.
I just have one more follow-up.
Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. This is going back to my council days. So when houses, this is coming into a neighborhood with this product, embraced, feared, announced, just because I can, in days as the councilperson, we'd like, okay, everybody's going to be okay. Come on by, we'll meet everybody. And I'm just wondering how it's set up now. And then the second portion, the ownership of the house, if there's, violations or there's nuisances happening there, is that they call the landlord sometimes, they try to get it figured out, or the landlord has to fix this stuff. So those are my 2 thoughts from my council.
Yeah, so yeah, we are the landlord. We haven't had any community issues thus far. There could, you never know if there would be one. We have been thankfully embraced by the community.
That's what I think for this one.
Yeah, the St. Clair Superior Community Development Corporation has welcomed us. These are in City Council Ward 7. Councilperson House has welcomed us. Most of these houses are vacant houses with the land bank, an eyesore, dilapidated, and we put significant investment in making them nice. So we had a grand opening a few months ago. Neighbors were beeping and waving. We had a food truck and a really nice community gathering to kind of kick it off.
And through the chair, just the timing of this rebirth of the St. Clair Superior Neighborhood Development Corporation with your program, it's just all working together for my reflection of the what's happening in the neighborhoods now. So thank you very much, and I appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
Councilwoman Turner.
Thank you. Through the chair, I actually had a meeting with Cynthia Rios over at the Haven a few weeks ago, and I was just wondering, do you have any indication of the numbers that are in the pipeline, and what is the overflow strategy, if there is one?
Great, yeah. Cindy and the Haven, they're excellent partners with Lutheran Metro Ministry. We actually provide the on-site staffing at the Haven. This project could receive direct referrals from the Haven, but in the case that it receives a family from another shelter, that opens up a bed or a room at the traditional shelter partners. Therefore, a Haven family can move over into that shelter. So either way, it helps reduce the need for overflow. We had overall numbers been somewhat down, I think, during COVID. This would be at the men's shelter and the family shelter, the Haven. And numbers have been increasing and is near 100% most nights. So it's pretty tight, and there's definitely need for any and all housing resources to keep the flow moving.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
By utilizing the overflow shelter in terms of being able to, have a say or utilize families, I always thought of the overflow shelter as those that are recently placed into, I don't like to do pecking orders. Families just all need homes, but have you thought about that creating an issue, allowing them to be able to, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if a family and babies are put in a house, I'm on.
Yeah, it hasn't been an issue at this point. We haven't actually had any Haven families move directly in with us. It is helpful that even families at the Haven Overflow are eligible for rapid rehousing. That was put into place a few years ago to expedite it so a family wouldn't, say, sit in the Haven for 3 weeks before they could even start their housing search. So at least that part of the services are available immediately.
Good. Any other questions in regards to this? I remember a couple years back, you were talking to me about this program, and now it's at fruition, and
Here we
I'm
are.
excited, right? So
Thank you.
definitely I'll have to come and, I don't know, tour. I know there's people's homes now, so house 4 and 5, are they completed renovating? Are those eligible to be toured?
Yes, so excellent point on the privacy. Once the family is
Oh,
in,
yeah, once
we
they're
don't do
in there.
anything then. But we do have a little opening celebration. Our last house set that opened was a few months ago, and we had invited people to see the house. They're beautiful. Our partners, Humble Design, does all of the furniture, lays it out. They're impressive. So
they're-
we'd be glad to
they're
have you.
furnished? They're
Yes,
furnished.
fully furnished.
Set that up with Levain, you know?
Okay.
Pop over and see it. You want to go, or you want another question?
I want to go.
Okay. So, of course, all committee members are welcome to see that. So, of course, you probably need this second reading suspension? Yes, please. All right. Can I have a motion to move this to the full council under second reading suspension?
Also move.
Second?
Okay, moved by Miller, seconded by Turner. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. That was something great today. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Resolution 2023-0013, authorizing a contract with United Way of Greater Cleveland in the amount not to exceed $1,220,450 for fiscal agent services and emergency food purchase assistance by hunger centers serving eligible Cuyahoga County residents for the period January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Good afternoon, Marcos Cortez with Health and Human Services on behalf of Jobs and Family Services. Again, this is a contract with United Way of Greater Cleveland for the coordination of funds for the emergency food program for the purchase of food from the Greater Cleveland Food Bank by the Hunger Network member agencies. Hunger centers who are part of the Hunger Network will receive funds from United Way in order to purchase foods from the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. Up to 10% of the value of this contract can be used for non-food hygiene products, and an additional 5% of the value for maintenance and supplies. The Greater Cleveland Food Bank will provide foods that align with Feeding America's The Foods to Encourage framework. Specifically, though, United Way will provide administrative oversight of the county funds, provide ongoing evaluation of the impact of the distribution of these through quarterly surveys, and provide oversight of the annual site visits to all funded hunger networks that are to be conducted by United Way, the Food Bank, and the Hunger Network. We've been contracting with United Way for some time now to provide oversight of this program. They are a neutral third party, and through their Emergency Food and Shelter Board can provide oversight of the 2 large entities that distribute food in Cuyahoga County. We have representatives from United Way, Ken Surratt and Shelby McGee, a representative from the Food Bank, Jessica Morgan, and a representative from the Hunger Network, Julie Johnson, here to answer any specific questions. Actually, they will do a presentation on the latest results of the program's impact.
Good afternoon. Good to see familiar faces. Ken Surratt, the Vice President of Community Investment at United Way of Greater Cleveland. First, I just wanted to say thank you. This is an important program. As Marco said, it's been around, I believe it's 2011. So I think just before I started with the county, and provides a necessary food, emergency food for families throughout the county. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Oh, do I do it? Oh, it's the clicker here. Thank you. So we'll do a brief overview of what happened in 2022. Talk about some proposed 20 changes that we made in the 2023 contract. Jess and Julie will talk a little bit more, just kind of make sure you understand the picture of what food insecurity looks like right now in the county. And unfortunately, those numbers are growing. So just looking back to 2022, and I do have to say this was an outdated version of this, so that number is incorrect at the top there. There's actually $1.195 million that went to food and hygiene purposes as part of this contract. Again, the amount was the same, 1.220. The difference there is just the administrative fee of the $25,450 for United Way. What if some of you may recall is that last year's contract, the language was a little murky. And actually, the way that it read was that United Way would get $100,000 more in an administrative fee than what we had really originally asked for. To make up for that, what we did was a $100,000 special designation to the food bank to rectify that. So we still follow the terms of the contract, but to ensure that the dollars were going to actual food, what we did is internally we're able to create a special designation amount to make up for the difference there in the contract. So next here, just looking at the people served, I mentioned this. Unfortunately, there is an increase in the looking at the people served, both the duplicated with the services as well as unduplicated. People are hungry. Inflation is unfortunately driving up food costs, and is making it even tougher for families. Another focus in last year really was just to improve coordination in this contract. We have 3 partners. We've been doing this a long time. A lot of the faces have changed over the years, but I feel like we've gotten in a really good cadence. We've adopted quarterly leadership meetings and management meetings, and with that, I think really improved the process, and it's what's really driving what we're some of the operational changes, which we think will make this work even better in 2023. And to talk about some of those proposed changes, I'm going to ask my colleague Shelby McGee to come up and go through those.
Thank you, Ken. And thank you, Council, for your time this afternoon. My name is Shelby McGee, and I serve as the Associate Director of Health for United Way of Greater Cleveland, and I'm the primary administrator for the county contract. Based on my experiences as the administrator of the contract in 2022, we have 3 major proposed changes for the 2023 contract that are all meant to make the contract more effective, both for the hunger centers that we partner with and for people who are receiving food services. So the first of that is to allow an additional 5%, up to 5% allowance in the contract, not asking for an increase in the contract, but allowing up to 5% of those contract dollars that are listed for food to also support supplies and maintenance for hunger centers. That could be things like shelving or pest control, essentially the sort of maintenance things that pantries need to be able to present the food service that they give to the communities. We emphasize that this would be an up to 5% amount. We don't expect that 5% will need to be spent every year, year over year, but we wanted to allow a little bit of flexibility so that our partners at Hunger Network and Greater Cleveland Food Bank can make the call on when hunger centers really require that additional support. And that would be supplemental to the 10% for the non-food hygiene items that were very successful in the 2022 contract. That was a pilot in 2022, and it was very successful. Those are some of the most popular items that we saw going from hunger centers, things like toilet paper, shampoo, et cetera. We're also asking for some increased flexibility in where the hunger centers are located or which hunger centers are included. In the previous contracts, we've always had a set list of hunger centers that would be eligible to receive county funding, but we noticed that sometimes hunger centers open and close, not at an exceedingly large rate, maybe 3 or 4 a year would open or close, and we trust in Greater Cleveland Food Bank and Hunger Network to know which centers really need these funds. It wouldn't increase the amount of funding that we're requesting, adjusting if we added a new hunger center, but allowing them to be flexible at where their dollars are going, and being responsive as new hunger centers open in places of need. So they would still have to meet criteria as far as receiving an annual site visit, offering fresh fruits and vegetables, really aligning with everything that the Food Bank and Hunger Network would require from hunger centers, but without having to get county approval anytime a site is going to close in the middle of a year or a new site could be added on. We also eliminated the label of expansion sites for 2023. This isn't really listed in the 2022 contract. It's sort of a relic of previous contracts where there was some part of that food allotment that was really just for Greater Cleveland Food Bank funded sites that were not a part of Hunger Network. Our partners have agreed that we should really be aligning this contract with hunger centers that are partners with both Hunger Network and the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. We actually were able to get some of the sites that were only Food Bank in 2022 to come on board with Hunger Network in 2023, so they'll receive some additional support that way, and it streamlines our invoicing and makes sure that all three partner organizations are on the same page and able to have equal oversight. Finally, we want to streamline some of the administrative processes in 2023, and primarily that means decreasing the amount of partners that are required to be at each annual site visit. Hunger Network have the close relationship with all of the sites that are funded under this contract and will continue to serve as the primary administrator at all of the site visits, and Food Bank plans to attend 99% of those site visits, but we share the results of those, which also means that United Way is asking to attend at minimum one site visit per quarter. And that's primarily so that the hunger centers are not overburdened with scheduling. Some of these hunger centers are only open a few hours a month. And so if you're trying to get 3 partners and the hunger center manager into the same room at the same time, we might really only have 12 time slots a year to get all of those partners there. We made it work last year, but it also meant pushing site visits back towards the end of the year and added stress to the hunger centers. I can say from personal experience, I get a lot out of going to those visits, so I definitely intend to attend far more than one per quarter, but limiting it to one per quarter requirement would mean that the hunger centers are better served, and they would still share the results of all of those site visits with United Way to ensure that all of those site visits are happening in a timely manner and that all sites are being served well. Those site visits are really intended to work well and troubleshoot with hunger centers, not as kind of a gotcha. So we just want to make sure hunger centers are served the way that they need to be. So those are the 3 proposed changes for 2023. I also want to show you a map of the hunger centers that have been identified for 2023. These very closely align to the hunger centers served in 2022. And again, if we're approved for additional flexibility, we can be responsive to adding or removing sites as needed. But I also wanted to compare the existing sites with a map of food insecurity in Cuyahoga County before I pass it to my partners at Greater Cleveland Food Bank and Hunger Network to talk about food insecurity in the county. So as you can see, the current list of hunger centers really spans the breadth of the county, especially along east to west. And it overlaps quite well with the areas of highest need for food insecurity, which are districts 3, 7, 8, and 10. And I will now pass it to my partners at Hunger Network and Food Bank to come up and share more information about food insecurity.
I'm always the short one that has to move the microphone down. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and ladies and gentlemen of County Council. Thank you so much, Shelby, for allowing us to come up here and speak after you, and thank you so much for having us in the chambers this afternoon to talk to you about what's very important in our community. So today I wanted to give you just a little bit of oversight on some of the different statistics about food insecurity in Cuyahoga County.
Excuse me, can you state your name for the record, please?
I sure can. Julie Johnson, CEO of Hunger Network. My apologies.
Thank you.
So in September of 2022, which was just this fall, there was some research that was done, and it was conducted by Stacker, which is an Ohio news source. And they compared a list of counties in Ohio with the highest rate of food insecurity using the information that Feeding America has found across the state of Ohio. Cuyahoga County, unfortunately, has the highest childhood food insecurity rate in Ohio. Child food insecurity rate is 25.8%, which is 9.7 higher than the national average across the country. Or I'm sorry, across Ohio. Overall food insecurity rate is 15%. That's 3.2% higher than the national average. And then Stacker estimated that the annual food budget shortfall in Cuyahoga County would be $109,973,000 if we were to deal with everyone in the county who needed food insecurity. They had estimated the cost per meal to be $3.67. I don't have an updated number for you today on that, but my guess is that it's exceptionally higher than that at this point, given the fact that I used to be able to buy 1,000 dozen eggs for $1,000, and now I can only buy about 500 dozen eggs for $500 for the same amount of money because of the increase. I know I just spat a lot of numbers out to you, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our Midtown Market, which is a grocery-style choice shopping experience in Midtown. We're so grateful to have it there. And instead of talking about numbers, I'd like to share a couple of names with you about some of our customers who come in on a weekly basis or several times a month. We're open every other Saturday morning between 9 and noon, and we're open every Monday evening between 4 and 7 p.m. Some of our customers are repeat customers. Some of our customers only have to come once a month. We found that folks really do come as groceries are needed. They're not there to take advantage of the system. So our neighbors are very concerned about food insecurity. I will tell you, because when we open up our pantry at 9 a.m., when we arrive at 7:30 to start preparing the pantry, there are already people waiting out in the parking lot. Not just people in cars, but people actually standing in the door. Snow, wind, rain, heat. They're all standing there waiting and waiting for us to let them in. Same thing when we opened up on Martin Luther King Day at 4 o'clock, 1:30 p.m., people were in the parking lot lining up already, ready to get into the food pantry. We have Miss Rose. She comes often. She's in her 80s, and she comes with Mr. Beck. I don't know if any of you know anything about guitar playing, but I always tease him that he was named after Jeff Beck, who was a famous guitar player. He laughs. Mr. and Mrs. Eng come over from Asiatown. They come probably 3 times a month. And they come because they're caring for family members, and they also have lost their grocery store in Asiatown. So while they can still shop small markets over in the area, they come really to Hunger Network to get the food staples that they need from our pantry. Then there's Miss Kirk. I affectionately call her Captain Kirk. So when she comes through the door, I yell, "Captain on deck." She laughs. We have great fun. But she comes because the SNAP dollars that she receives on a monthly basis just are not enough for her to feed her family. So she has to come and supplement items at Hunger Network. And then finally, the last person I'll speak with you about before turning it over to my colleague, Jessica Morgan, who we really could not do what we do with any of our pantries across the system without the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. Miss Jackson, she came in on Saturday morning, and I happened to do the shopping with her. She mentioned to me that she got a $1 raise, which I thought was fabulous news. I was like, congratulations, you received a $1 an hour raise. That's not good news for Miss Jackson. The terrible thing is that $1 put her over the cliff threshold. So now she's lost all of her SNAP benefits, all of her medical benefits, and any other benefits that she was receiving. So now she says instead of coming once a month to supplement, she's going to have to come the 4 times that we're open every single time because she has to do her grocery shopping. That's the kind of a dilemma that we're seeing. Food shortages, food scarcity, and increasing prices are happening here in Cuyahoga County. Thank you, and I'll turn over to Jessica Morgan, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of council. It's nice to see you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. My name is Jessica Morgan. I am the Chief Programs Officer at the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, and want to echo my friends at United Way and Hunger Network and their sentiments. I would love to share some things that we've seen at the food bank that have affected people, families, and also the work that we do over the years, especially since the pandemic hit. I think we're all well aware of many of the different pandemic-related supports that went into effect starting in the spring of 2020. Many of those have ended and more are coming to an end that we are concerned about. So first and foremost, about this time last year was the expiration of the enhanced child tax credit. That there's a lot of research that shows that by giving families an extra $250 or $300 a month, depending on the age and number of children they had, families were actually using that money to purchase food. We would love to see more permanent legislation to help aid in that, but until that happens, we will continue to serve. Just last year, the child nutrition program waivers that were implemented as a result of the pandemic expired. This allowed flexibility for children's feeding programs specifically. It allowed for grab-and-go meals, which we saw as a huge benefit. Sometimes children just don't want to eat the meal inside of the library. If it's a nice sunny day, they want to take that to the park with their friends. The waiver that was implemented allowed for that to happen. Unfortunately, last summer, those waivers went away. We actually served less children last summer because those waivers went away than we did the summer previous. There is some good news on the horizon in the omnibus bill that just passed in December. There will be summer EBT, summer SNAP for families coming up. And so we are looking forward to seeing some additional support for families. However, as my colleague Julie mentioned, Cuyahoga County having the highest child insecurity rate, we are definitely concerned about children being fed. And then, of course, the SNAP emergency allotments, which will come to an end at the end of February locally. There are 199 food banks across the country. SNAP provides 9 times the amount of meals than all 199 food banks do collectively. And so when we see cuts to SNAP, food banks and their partners simply cannot meet that demand overnight. We are particularly concerned come March when a number of individuals in our community will see a reduction in their SNAP benefits. To put it into perspective, the senior citizen that Julie just mentioned, who is utilizing the pantry to supplement, might be getting about $280 a month now with those maximum SNAP allotments. Their benefits will go back down to about $18 a month starting in March. And so we are really concerned about that. We want to ensure that our pantry partners are ready. We're working very closely with JFS and a number of nonprofit partners, including Hunger Network, United Way, and our network of partner agencies across our service territory to ensure that families are aware of those changes. And of course, as Ken mentioned earlier, we are still dealing with the effects of inflation. Across the board, household costs have increased significantly. Food is up about 11%. Gas, as we all know, is up 44%. The food bank has a fleet of over 20 vehicles, all of which require diesel fuel. And our budget in 1 year has increased almost $200,000 to $250,000 just to ensure we have those trucks on the road. Utilities have increased, and of course, shelter. We are and have seen a reduction in USDA and state commodities. Typically in a non-post-pandemic year, the food bank distributes about 50% commodities, 40% donations, and 10% purchased. Last year, about over 20% of what we distributed was food that we had to buy to help supplement for the reduction in commodities and donations. And if food prices are expensive for individuals at the grocery store, we are also feeling the effects of buying that product in bulk. And I realized I did not change the slide as I spoke, so I apologize. Nope, wrong way. Nope. There we go. There's a lot of buttons on this little remote. So this is some of the detail that I just spoke about. This is a chart that highlights just what will happen when those maximum SNAP allotments end. We will see locally about 54 million meals lost. Of course, the food bank distributed the equivalent of about 36 million meals in our fiscal year 21. And so you could see that we possibly could not make up that difference. So it's through contracts like this, it's through partnerships like with the Hunger Network and United Way, that do help us to meet that increased need. And I've been at the food bank for over 10 years, have seen a lot of changes in leadership, both at United Way and the Hunger Network. And I'll just echo that the relationship is very strong, and we are really committed to working together to ensure that everybody has the food that they need. I will turn it back over to Shelby, I believe. Or I can handle, sure. So we are, while we're not asking for an increase this year, we do hope to come back. We're setting the table now. We do hope to come back and ask for an increase in 2024. I believe the date on here is outdated. As Ken mentioned earlier, there was a couple of last-minute changes we made. And so given some of the things that we talked about today, the increase in food costs, the increase in need that we're seeing, we'll be keeping a close eye on those things and hope to be back here around this time next year asking for a little bit more support as we move forward. Thank you.
Jessica will speak to the slide. So is this the recommended increasing the emergency food contract, the 1.5? Is that inclusive of the 25 and the 1.4?
That is correct.
Okay, not separate.
That is correct.
All right. I had a couple questions, so I tried to write everybody's name next to the slide. So Shelby, the 2023 proposed changes, the streamlined administrative processes, who will this help? Is it going to help United Way or?
It would be really helpful for all three of these partners plus the hunger centers themselves. So the hunger centers struggle when they're asked to coordinate with the schedules of 3 different implementing agencies, especially because their primary operative is to serve the folks who are coming on those days. Often they're volunteer run or run by part-time staff. And so if we're asking them to come outside of their hours, then that's an additional burden on them to accommodate our schedules. But if it's during their pantry hours, that can also be a challenge because what they're trying to do in those hours is serve people. But it's also helpful for us because it means that we're still able to share all of the information about what happened during those site visits. There's a standardized form that we use for each site visit, but it also means that we have more time to function as a team and address other issues. So for example, we revised the survey last year that we were doing to make that more responsive to getting better community feedback, and that was time that was used that we would have more of if we were not required to be at every single site visit.
Okay, and but I thought that was a standard. I thought that was in the law that they are required to see so many.
They are, so every site would still have an annual site visit. The ask is that not all 3 partners have to be a part of those site visits. So they still would be undergoing a site visit annually. Hunger Network would take the lead on being there for every single site visit. Food Bank plans to attend almost every site visit, and we're asking that United Way, as the third-party administrator, attends 1 per quarter so that we're able to get a sense of how they're going, and we would track that all annual site visits are happening, but not have to be there. My experience as the person who attended on behalf of United Way last year is that really Hunger Network and Greater Cleveland Food Bank are the ones who can answer most questions and also the ones who are going to troubleshoot any problems. So things that we would see at a site visit, for example, would be our refrigerator is broken and we really need a new one. And that's something that Food Bank or Hunger Network could provide grants and assistance for purchasing. United Way is really there listening, but not able to provide the services. That's not our role. And so it feels a little crowded. I love attending them and hope to attend far more than 1 per quarter, but I'd like to make the scheduling easier on everyone.
All agencies are in agreement with this?
Yes.
And how was that determined?
We started in 2022 having quarterly leadership meetings. So myself, well, really all of the presenters you've heard from today met on a quarterly basis. And we determined this in our Q4 meeting, that it would assist us in doing better service to our hunger centers and having more time to strategize.
I know you're moving into what you call a streamlined process. I've been on several of those visits. So sorry that I was an extra crowd, but it was, you know, it was very useful for me to see.
Yes.
But I'm just, I guess, is this going to be written in a written format where everybody's in agreement for these proposed changes?
Yes, so in the draft of the 23 contract that's included in our scope of work, yes.
Okay, so I would just say the only thing that I would probably advocate for and change would be this, for the streamlined administrative process, okay, requiring oversight and cutting down, but with the exception, if any of those partners wanted to attend at a particular time, that they should be able to be allowed to.
Absolutely. We can make that adjustment.
I have lots of questions, so I'll open it up to Council Miller.
So on this slide here, it says recommending increasing the contract to $1,500,000. Is that for 2023 or for 2024?
2024, this was a mistake.
And is that in comparison with the $1,220,450 that's in the current contract? So it would be an increase of about 280,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And could you go back to the slide on the childhood food insecurity rate?
Absolutely. Let's, got it. Working the clicker.
Okay.
Yes.
So if I look at this child in food insecurity rate, 25.8%, 9.7% higher than the national average, I can read that in the next point in two different ways. One way I could read it is that the national average is 23.5. Because if you increase 23.5 by 9.7%, you get 25.8. The other way I could read it is that the national average is 16.1. Because if you add 9.7 to 16.1, you get 25.8. So my question is, which of those is it?
I might defer to Julie to see if you have those data on hand, and if not, we can follow up later. I can't remember exactly which is correct.
I hate to admit, I'm not quick as math as you are. So these are statistics that we found. As I mentioned, it was a Stacker report that was actually done. So while math is certainly not my forte, I'm sorry. Can you explain to me again how you're coming up with the...
Yeah, see, and I see this a lot in this kind of presentation. This is nothing unusual.
Sure.
But when you say the childhood food insecurity rate is 25.8%, and that's 9.7% higher than the national average.
Correct.
It could be read in two ways. One, that the national average is 23.5. Because if you increase 23.5 by 9.7%, you get 25.8. But the other way you could look at it is it's 9.7% full percentage points higher. You know that the national average is 16.1 and the percent, and the local average is 9.7% of the total base more, you know, so that's what my question is.
I'm sorry, I don't think I can answer that question because I wasn't the statistician that calculated that. So from my understanding, the study was all the counties in the state of Ohio. So Stacker actually was the one that came up with the percentage points. So I was not involved in this survey or in this research study. So I probably cannot answer those questions very accurately for you. I was citing a news source that we had.
So could you, oh, okay.
You sure can.
To the council, and it's a little slow coming up, but I found the report. I'd be happy to share it with you, so you can make sure that your interpretation is correct. Is that satisfactory?
Yes,
And again, we're not asking for the increase this year. I understand your questions about the statistic, but we'll send you the report so that it's clear. It's coming up a little slow on my phone, unfortunately.
Okay, fine.
I was able to pull up the report, and it's written exactly as it is here, unfortunately. But they do state at the beginning that the Ohio food insecurity rate for children is 16%, 15.9. So
17 to 25.
that's the
Okay.
Ohio rate rather than the national rate. They list it exactly as it is here, as like 9.7% higher than national average without giving us that rate within that report. But we could
Okay.
certainly pull those data for you and share them if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. The other question is about the site flexibility. If you're gonna change any of the sites, is it that the Hunger Network and the Food Bank would have to agree on the change? And if they agree, then it can be done?
Yes, correct. And we don't take a membership away from anyone. What tends to happen throughout the course of a year, because so many of the pantries are volunteer-led or volunteer-operated, that, or they're in churches or facilities that need great amounts of repair, that the administration that's running the site itself determines we can no longer provide food services at our organization based upon structural deficits, based upon insufficient volunteers. But what would happen then is that entire site would roll off, right? And there's still the funding that would be available. And that's fine. We can definitely allocate larger portions to more, to fewer hunger sites. That's not a problem. But throughout the course of the year, also what happens is we find new organizations, new churches, new social service organizations that want to open a pantry as well. And in order to be able to do that, then they would have to wait one full cycle for either Cuyahoga County funding to become available again, or for Emergency Food and Shelter Program funding to become available again, because it's written very stringently in the contract. So then if they have a need to provide food at that organization, they have to wait one full funding cycle. So we bring them on through a course of study that we help them get up and operational. They do some food provision for a number of months so that we see that they can adequately function, and then they would be allowed through becoming a Hunger Network member and a Greater Cleveland Food Bank member before that site would open up. So it would be upon the agreement of both partners. And then, of course, we would keep United Way informed as well.
So, final question is that occasionally I hear rumblings from some of the hunger centers saying that the quality of food provided isn't up to the level that they would like, and that they're not sure this three-party arrangement that we have is the best, and that it should be reconsidered. And my question is, have you folks heard these things, and how do you deal with these concerns?
So I will invite Jess back up from that, because she is generally the food source.
Sure. So I will comment on the quality question and then attempt the second part of the question, but invite my colleagues to also comment there. From a quality standpoint, first and foremost, we just moved into a brand new building. I do think that our storage issues did at our old building on South Waterloo, we had quickly outgrown that space. For example, we ran out of room in our cooler and our freezer, and so sometimes when a pallet of produce would come in, it would have to sit on the dry dock waiting for space to be stored. We no longer have that issue. We send out quality control surveys and have gotten a lot of really positive comments and feedback since moving into our new building in October. So my hope is that by strengthening our quality control, and also just having more storage capacity to store fresh product, it will help to alleviate some of those quality issues. To answer the second part of the question, it is confusing, I think, sometimes to have three entities providing oversight. Our three organizations have really been working very hard, I would say, for 3-4 years. I mean, Julie, you've been there for almost 3 years. And we have really tried to, one, explain what the difference is between the Greater Cleveland Food Bank and the Hunger Network. Sometimes I think that there's general confusion about that, but that our role is really to provide support. We educate them on the provisions of the contract and some of the things that we are just required to do based on the language that's in the contract, but we are coming from a place of support. We do want to ensure that they have what they need to be successful in their food distribution efforts. And I think that that's something that we will continue to do, but I will invite anybody else who'd like to comment on that as part of the partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, when you receive increases from the federal and state governments, how does that affect your sites?
Ms. Turner, do you mean through the federal and state commodity programs?
Yes.
So when we see increases or decreases, it certainly impacts a number of things. When we see increases, it's a good thing. That means that there is more food available. It's free food that goes out to a network of partner agencies who are qualified to receive that food, who are serving anybody below 200% of poverty. When we see decreases, it's not a good thing. We rely on those federal and those state commodities in order to provide support to our network of partners. Those commodities come to us in way of food. And so when we do see those decreases, that means that our food pantries have less food to distribute. And in order to make up for the difference in those losses, we either have to solicit more food donations, or the food bank has to buy more food, or Hunger Network has to buy more food. We have seen an increase in the amount of food we have had to purchase since 2019. And with food prices increasing, that is also a concern. It is not sustainable to have to buy more and more food every year because of expenses. And so when we see those increases, we are excited about them. And so there are some increases coming to the program, which is wonderful news. We're super excited about that, but we have not seen that food just yet. The bill just passed. We probably will not see those increases until the spring and well into the summer, as the USDA kind of gets their ducks in a row. And it's filtered through the states and state associations, and then allocated percentage-wise out to food banks across the country. But it's a step in the right direction, for sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I just wanted to share another candid comment too. So we're anticipating for the Emergency Food and Shelter Program, which we receive funding for on an annual basis, is going to decrease this year. The amount allocated to Ohio, and I think Shelby can correct me on this, was about $717,000. That's less than's been previously allocated in this phase. So from my projections, if I'm looking at our portion that we're normally funded through Emergency Food and Shelter, Hunger Network is expecting to sustain about a $50,000 loss.
I get it. Okay, so I wanted to follow up on just one question. Do we need more centers on the west side?
I believe that Yes, I believe that we could add centers on the west side, and I think that we've been working collaboratively to try to identify some of those areas that could house them. Again, it's quite a process, but we're trying to find partners in those areas who would be willing to host hunger centers, and then we go through the whole certification process where we have to make sure that they have adequate structures, adequate refrigeration, adequate freezer space, adequate volunteers, et cetera.
It'd be nice to reach out to the West Side Council people. Maybe
Yes.
they already know and can help you with that. So I open that up. And then, because I can't belabor, I've got 4 more contracts to go over. But just on your 2023 proposed changes in regards to adding and removing sites. I see where that gives you guys a little bit more flexibility, but I would just say that maybe what I would like added is United Way notifying this committee when those changes occur, so we can make sure going forward that we have some hands-on and that we know, and to make sure that the centers are evenly distributed. You know, we're not coming back next year and we're like, why do we got so many over there? So just to forewarn that. But I take it you guys want this under second reading suspension? All
Yes,
right.
please, Madam Chair.
All right, and thank you all for coming today. Can I put this forth to the full council for second reading suspension? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Sweeney, seconded by Turner. All in favor to move this to the full council under second reading suspension, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Right, Madam Clerk, if you could please read that next item into the record, and thank you, Joe. I was watching time.
Resolution 2023-0014, authorizing to adopt the Child Abuse and Neglect Memorandum of Understanding with Cuyahoga County law enforcement agencies and entities.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Council. I'm Jennifer Crossman, representing the Department of Health and Human Services and the Division of Children and Family Services with the Memorandum of Understanding between DCFS and all law enforcement entities in Cuyahoga County for the purpose of child protection and collaboration around that. So just a brief background, we had a MOU already in effect that was last revised in 2018. DCFS was working on revising that again, in part to just increase our communication and collaboration with law enforcement when it comes to being able to, in the moment, send out a child protection specialist, whether it's somebody who's already involved with the family or someone from our 24/7 hotline. When a child is in crisis, family is in crisis, have somebody on the scene so that, you know, it's invaluable for us and for law enforcement to be able to have those conversations right then and there, work together as a team with the family to figure out what options are on the table, what resources, what services can be provided to help them right when they need it with what they need. And so that was partly, you know, what we were in the process of doing, like in late 2021 to revise that 2018 MOU. We also thought that that would be extremely helpful for the process of, you know, trying to avoid and prevent, when unnecessary, you know, having children brought down to the Jane Edna Hunter building for placement, you know, with an order for them to be in DCFS custody because the child can't return home. Again, if we can do our interviews, our assessments, and we can get out and work with law enforcement, there's a potential there that, you know, we can provide other options that would be short of having a child having to come down to await placement, whether that be a short-term wait or a longer-term wait. And so we saw this as an opportunity to really meet with law enforcement and talk that through with them and get their collaboration so that we can have a mutual help with families. So we were in the middle of that when we became aware of House Bill 4, which was eventually passed and became effective on May 30th of 2022. And that House Bill requires a biennial approval of this MOU, audit by ODJFS, and a review by all signers. So any law enforcement entity or partner, you know, some of the other partners to this would be like the Human Trafficking Task Force, the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center, the Cleveland Municipal School District, you know, Metropolitan School District, excuse me, who work with us, who might not be considered a traditional law enforcement entity, but definitely are a partner to us and work in collaboration when a child is suspected to be abused or neglected. And so all signers are required by House Bill 4 to review this on a biennial basis starting December of 2024 and then every even year after that. So we're kind of getting a jump start on that to seek approval for this MOU. And then the other requirement is that the county council or board of commissioners would also review and approve the MOU in terms of, does it follow House Bill 4 guidelines? including some specifics about like how are we collaborating with law enforcement. Many of the House bill requirements are ones that are already in place and have been for many years here in Cuyahoga County, such as, any child abuse report, we're sharing that with law enforcement, and they're doing the same with us. But the state has set up some additional requirements when it comes to child neglect allegations, that we would collaborate and mutually share those reports when it rises to the level of, that might be short of law enforcement involvement. In other words, they're not already involved. They haven't made any arrests in conjunction with a report of possible child neglect. However, we're sharing this report with them in case, that they do become involved with that family, or they're already involved with that family and we don't know about it, so that there's that collaboration and that teamwork there, so we're not missing and there's not any gaps. So ODJFS came up with the language for that, and that's also in the MOU that was presented to you. One more thing is that we revised our visor card that we already had in effect with the 2018 MOU, and that just provides a QR code for law enforcement that has a lot of different resources and services for them, to contact us directly, as I mentioned earlier, to help families in the moment and to get access to DCFS staff to come out on the scene and help out and provide any, diversion services for those kids and families who are already involved with other systems that are serving them.
Does your law enforcement, does that include court officials or just police officers specifically? The term law enforcement.
The term law enforcement in this is typically the law enforcement, but there is one of the signers on this is the juvenile court, the executive judge.
Any other questions? Okay. Just real quickly, explaining some of the new changes. What were the specific new changes from the last MOU?
The new changes, we added an excerpt from a Cleveland Police Department policy about interacting with youth. So there's some specific language in there that is now shared. The House Bill for requirements about sharing information and reports and the biennial approval, and also there's specifics in the MOU and on, I think it's Appendix 1 is the visor card that provide immediate access to a hotline supervisor at DCFS, so that they can kind of assign that and triage that and figure out who can come out, to meet with law enforcement and with the family on the scene if needed.
Okay, so this MOU will come before us every 2 years?
Yes.
Okay. So the last one was done in 2018?
And now, this one would be 2022. The new requirements are that it comes before December 31st, 2024. But we'd like to get this one in effect now and then every 2 years thereafter.
Has the Child Advisory Group been made aware of this?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so basically we're voting today. Do you need second reading suspension, or does it have to be done right away? Okay.
Sure.
So we're voting to accept this new memorandum of understanding. All right.
One question.
Yes, Councilman Miller.
And the question is that if we adopt this now, does this mean we would not have to update it again until 2026, or would we have to do it again before the end of 2024?
We would do it again by December 31st, 2024, just to abide by our own. That's the plan that we've agreed to with ODJFS. I think technically we don't have to do it until 2026, but the plan that we've already agreed upon with the director of ODJFS is that we would take a look at it again by December 31st, 2024.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll make a motion to move R2023-0014 to the full council under second reading suspension. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Conwell, seconded by Turner. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, if you could read the next item into the record.
Resolution 2023-0015, authorizing an amendment to a contract with the Salvation Army for supportive services for homeless men in the Pickup Assessment Sheltering Service Transitional Housing Program for the period January 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2022, to extend the time period to September 30th, 2023, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $794,821.
Good afternoon, Council. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I'm Melissa Surratt, Director of the Office of Homeless Services, requesting approval of this amendment to the contract with Salvation Army. This is the second amendment, adding $794,000, $821, and extending the contract term through 9/30/23 with no change in scope or service. The Pickup Assessment, Shelter, and Services, otherwise known as PASS program, Rapid Rehousing Program Services, single adult homeless men with supportive services and rental assistance. The primary goals of the project are to provide basic, temporary housing and safety net services for 75 homeless men at a time, link clients with permanent housing, and support clients in accessing earned income, recovery supports, and stable incomes. Excuse me, sorry. With me today, I have Executive Director Bo Hill to answer any additional questions, as well as OHS staff member Aaron Reardon.
Okay. Just one question, Director, from me. We just had this at the end of, not too long ago, in HHS last year. I remember Bo coming, so has time speeded past me? It just seems like you guys were just in front of me for some portion of this this contract.
This program is both funded through levy as well as HUD. So you'll notice this is late as well, just to call that out. The HUD award was severely delayed this past year. So we could have been before you for the levy funding.
Okay.
That sound right, Aaron?
Okay. All right. That helps. Any questions? Anything you'd like to share, Bo? What's going on over there?
Chair, I just want to say thank you very much for the council's support, not only on this matter, but all the matters that are facing those that we are called to serve, and especially support from the Office of Homeless Services.
Sir, can you state your name for the record, please?
I apologize. Bo Hill.
Thank you.
Beauhill.
Any other questions? Seeing none, hearing none. Director, you need the second reading suspension. I'm looking at the dates.
Yes, please.
All right. Can I have a motion for R20230015 to the full council? Second reading suspension.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Sweeney, seconded by Miller. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Aye. All right. Madam Clerk, if you could read the next item into the record.
Resolution 2023-0016, authorizing an amendment to a master contract with various providers for permanent supportive housing services to chronically homeless single adults and high-barrier homeless persons for the period July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022, to extend the time period to June 30th, 2023, and for additional funds in the total amount not to exceed $2 million for the providers listed as items E 1 through 7.
Good afternoon again. Melissa Surratt, Office of Homeless Services. The Continuum is representing today. I'm requesting approval of a contract with various U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development approved providers for shelter and rapid rehousing for families. The service is not new to the county, although it was previously awarded as individual contracts. The primary goals of the project. Sorry.
Did you read PSH or the?
My apologies. You read 0016, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
My apologies. I jumped to the next one. I'll back up. Still Melissa, Office of Homeless Services. requesting an alternative procurement process to award Health and Human Services levy-funded contracts to the following HUD-approved permanent supportive housing providers: Eden, Famicos Foundation, Front Steps, Humility of Mary, Frontline Service, and the YWCA of Greater Cleveland. These providers operate 14 PSH sites serving chronically homeless single adults and high-barrier homeless persons as part of the Housing First initiative, which was established in 2004 with the goal of ending chronic homelessness in the county. The Cleveland-Cuyahoga County Continuum of Care completed a required competitive review and ranking of all continuum projects in September 2019, identifying PSH as a priority on its consolidated application for federal homeless assistance dollars. As a result of this process, the COC was awarded HUD funding for these providers. Funding was included as part of the county biennial budget to address shortfalls in the program operating and supportive services budget, which covers the upcoming contract year. Using this amendment, OHS will assure the continued availability of services to chronically homeless single adults and homeless persons with high barriers to housing, including rent-subsidized permanent housing, medical care, mental health, recovery, and employment services to help individuals integrate back into their communities. The primary goals of the PSH program are to work with those who are experiencing the highest barriers and to stabilize, including chronically homeless single adults and persons with high barriers to housing, provide rental assistance, medical care, mental health, and the other services that I previously mentioned. With me today, I have OHS staff person Erin Reardon, as well as representation from agencies being here awarded. I'd ask them to come up at this time for any additional questions.
All right, Director, just for example, there are different amounts that are being awarded to different organizations. That is based on the actual units that each place has. Like, so for example, Famicos, is it because it's smaller, smaller sites that are being utilized at that place versus Eden that has probably, I don't know how many.
Sure. Madam Chair, from what I understand, prior to me coming on board, there was an analysis that was done that did include and give consideration to the units, as well as looking at all the funding sources that were coming in to these particular programs and looking at outcomes in regards to those served. So there were a variety of considerations taken into place, but all were funded, they're requested.
All right, any questions from Councilman Miller?
Just one question. This contract extension was supposed to start on July 1, 2022. Why is it over 6 months late, and what is the impact of that?
It is late. There were some issues with obtaining documents, since it is a master, working with various providers, which I know can take longer periods of time at time. And in addition to that, obviously working through insurance and legal issues as well. Marcos, is there anything you would add?
Marcos Cortez with Health and Human Services. So there was also, I guess, a question about who was processing this master contract. A great majority of the contracts comes through my department, Contracts Administration, but sometimes the smaller community initiatives take the lead on their own contracts. So there was a little discrepancy in who was going to take the lead on this one. So eventually it was determined that we would do it because of the, Homeless Services is a small entity and they have a lot of contracts. So we actually, looks like we got started on it around August, but as Melissa mentioned, there are a good number of providers on here, and it takes some time to get the documentation that we need, specifically the certificate of insurance. So I believe it was probably uploaded around November, but because of the closing and the hiatus that happens there, it didn't come until this occasion.
So I presume we haven't spent any money under the new contract yet, is that correct?
If there's no contract active, then you can't invoice any fund.
So is this creating a cash flow problem for any of these agencies?
I would say just a general statement, Councilman, the delay in all contracts are currently affecting our system greatly. Just to make, it's a real thing. And our office obviously understands that, and I think works most closely with the providers at hand and filling that burden with them. So at this point, we are in a space where this is gratefully impacting and affecting services in the continuation overall with our contracts.
Okay, thank you.
So, I've had this problem in several entities. So would you say for this one specifically, the problems had to do with the individual contract signing, or was there a holdup in HUD funding, or what was the specific reason why we're...
For this specific contract, it was related, I think, to gathering, trying to be inclusive of all documents since it is a master. And working with each provider is different, especially as you're working through insurance. Some things aren't always consistent as we're going from contract to contract either. These aren't unique, though. This is just one of the many factors that I think, due to our process, leads us to have delays.
Honestly, I don't remember these hangups that we're having now with getting providers paid. These are new current things that started to happen last year. So I want to get to the bottom of it. Maybe you can think about, look at the previous year when we first engaged the individual agencies that are in the master contract, so we can get that paperwork in on time. We've had problems with the collabs, board and care contracts, the same thing with, so I see a lot of issues that are occurring with the master contracts that really weren't in the past. So we need to get a handle on this, because my only suggestion is, taking away the master contract. Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. What a distinguished-looking group you have behind you. And thank you for coming. So basically, if we pass this, it helps with your immediate needs to get the funding out.
Absolutely.
To this, and then we deal with all the issues that brought us to this point.
Yes.
I'm cool with it. Just wanted to get a clarity, and thank you for coming out.
I appreciate that, Councilman. And if I may, Madam Chair, I just want, not pointing directly at providers. They're all busy, and I'm open to a discussion, and I'd like to talk greater at our process overall, because it's never just one variable. I'm not saying this is the providers. We have a very cumbersome process that I agree with you. In the 3 years I've been on, I've never seen it like this. And we're just not turning them out. And who suffers is the community. And them. I mean, we're all in this together. They are me. I don't know, they're an extension. Is there anything the providers would want to add? Because, I mean, truly, I work with you on the daily, and I hear this. I have these conversations with you. If I may just extend this to them, because I know we're struggling. So if you want to add anything in regards to.
Just real quick, I will. I'll just say something. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of council. My name is Fred Berry. I'm with the Humility of Mary Housing, and I just really want to establish with you all what a game changer this funding was for our organization personally. The particular project that is funded by these dollars is Opportunity House in Garfield Heights. We house young men ages 18 to 24 who have experienced homelessness and have a disability of long duration. Oftentimes, the young men that come to us are very broken when they get to us. And so when we talk about the high barriers that some of our folks have, this is in particular a population that we're very passionate about, that we see those barriers all the time. But these dollars enable us to provide additional staffing, which from a overnight security perspective. And with that in mind, it just ensures the safety not only of those that we serve, it further increases the safety of those that we serve, but also those that work for the organization that are there to serve. So we've seen a lot of great changes in our young men who have developed somewhat of a mentoring relationship with some of the security folks that are on site. And it truly has enabled us to just be better stewards of service and meeting them where they are, which is the entire point of the whole Housing First initiative. So anyway, I just thank you for the opportunity to be here and share that with you, because we're very excited about the opportunity.
Mr. Berry, if you can leave the clerk your card, I would like to, so I take it you're new in our kind of little circle, maybe about a year?
No, so I've actually, I've been with Humility of Mary Housing since 2016. This is probably the second council that I've attended with regard to this funding.
But how long have we been funding you guys?
For the levy dollars, this is just the second year.
Yeah.
This is
that's
the
what I thought.
renewal.
Fairly new to me.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else like to share? So, yeah, I know, I understand on smaller contract, agencies, and you don't have the staff, or you don't, holds you up, and the larger ones they're easy to crank that stuff out. But I always say the only disadvantage with the master contract is that no provider can get any money until all of you guys' stuff is in. So we're well aware of those issues, and I look forward to having further conversations with you, Melissa, Director Sirac, in regards to this. Yes.
Thank you very much. Emma Petrie Barcelona. I'm the Chief Operating Officer with Eden. I, too, would just like to extend thanks so much for these resources, but I just want to speak to the impact, both of the timing as well as what we do with this. So these resources go to support 12 permanent supportive housing properties that Eden owns or manages here, which works out to be just about $1,000 per unit that you're helping in this way, and augmenting other resources we have. And it's all serving, as noted, formerly homeless persons, the chronically homeless, and adults who need these supports. I'll just note that in 2022, Eden did expend all of this money that you'll subsequently be voting on. And so this helped offset costs that we didn't have resources for, to help ensure that we were fully, or at least close to fully staffed for roles like maintenance techs and custodians, and also to increase their wages so that they're not only within market wages, but really appropriate for the amount of work that they're putting in there. I'll also just speak to the process overall. One thing for sure that's always that's been a challenge with this one is that while Eden has owned and managed properties now for over 30 years at this point, one of the delays was the levels of insurance that the county requires for the contracts. And we've always insured our buildings. We've always been consistent with owning and managing property, and that absolutely was contributing. I'm not saying it's the only thing, but I just wanted to note there, when it comes to procurement and the processes therein, is to ensure that there is appropriateness and levels of insurance, and as well as given what is being funded to do. So I just wanted to add that note. But again, grateful for the support, and thank you very much.
And what's your name again?
I'm Emma Petrie Barcelona. I'm the Chief Operating Officer on behalf of Eden.
And what kind of insurance are we specifically referring to?
So there's different levels, and I don't know specifically with these contracts, but often it has to do with your various levels of coverage and the amounts that you have in place. And I just know that has been an ongoing challenge. But we can get more specifics. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Miller.
For your information, Ms. Petrie Barcelona is also a member of the Lakewood School Board and a very distinguished community leader in my district.
I just wanted to add, Chairwoman Conwell, that one level of insurance in particular for our organization was the cybersecurity. We had to increase ours significantly. I don't ultimately remember the additional cost that we incurred in order to meet the threshold, but that's one example.
Thank you. So we have about, I have to cut this short unless there's any other questions from my colleagues. We'll be having further discussion from now until the full council hears this this legislation. Yes, Councilman Miller.
It's clearly late, so I'm going to move
Thank
second reading suspension.
Right. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Miller, seconded by Turner. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Madam Clerk, last item, I do believe.
Resolution 2023-0017, authorizing a master contract with various providers in the total amount not to exceed $994,088 for rapid rehousing services for homeless families and shelters in connection with the fiscal year 2021 Continuum of Care Homeless Assistance Grant Program for the period June 1st, 2022 through May 31st, 2023 for the providers listed as F1 through 4.
Thank you. Melissa Surak, Director of the Office of Homeless Services. I'm requesting approval of a contract with various U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development approved providers for shelter and rapid rehousing for families for the anticipated cost of $994,088. The service is not new to the county, although it was previously awarded as individual contracts. The primary goals of the project are to provide safe, decent shelter for families facing homelessness and/or domestic violence, move families from homelessness into permanent housing as quickly as possible using rapid rehousing assistance, and to link families with ongoing community supports to ensure housing stability. The 4 providers were identified as subgrantees through a competitive process completed in November of 2021. The Office of Homeless Services, as the lead agency for the Cuyahoga County Continuum of Care, submitted an application to the fiscal year 2021 Department of Housing and Urban Development Continuum of Care Program competition. OHS is required by HUD to solicit applications for all COC services and evaluate all proposals competitively through a review and ranking committee. The final review and ranking must be approved by the OHS Advisory Board, the governing body of the Homeless Continuum of Care. A total of 4 agencies submitted proposals for shelter and rapid rehousing services, and all 4 were recommended for funding. With me today, I have representation from Family Promise, Journey Center, Salvation Army, and Westside Catholic Center, and Aaron Reardon, OHS staff as well.
So these organizations, Director Sirek, were the only 4 that received the rapid refunding?
That is correct.
Okay, because I thought this list was longer before.
It's been these 4 typically, and they're the only that 4. They were the only 4 that applied as well.
Okay, all right. Anything any of you would like to share? All right, Bo.
Bo Hill with the Salvation Army. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for the support, and talking a little bit about what you alluded to earlier, the timing of this and the challenges that it creates with respect to cash flow. Not only are we significantly behind, but all of us as providers up here have some major staffing challenges, and then the increase in expenses associated with those, that the cash flow challenges along with those increased expenses are pretty significant. So, but I appreciate very much so the council's support and partnership with OHS.
Okay, thank you. Any of you, others, agencies? He summed it up? All right. So we're going to move this to second reading suspension. We don't want to hold up anything anymore. Can I have a motion? It's moved by Sweeney.
Second.
Seconded by Turner. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Moving to the full council under second reading suspension.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you all. Thank you.
Just to keep the ball rolling, miscellaneous business, anyone have anything? Okay, I just wanted to say, in terms of, this was a lot, you know, this is a lot that's during this committee, and I know that there is another, so I'm going on record, there's another committee after, and I will talk to the chair personally, but this is a lot. And so if this committee is about people in this community, and everybody's voice deserves to be heard, and I have always, if we have guests, have extended that to them for making their time and effort for coming down, doing that. And so if we run over past 3 o'clock, contingent upon the schedule that we had, we will do so. Meeting adjourned.